of all, everyone, if you could locate that chat box, I know I've said this at once already, but just in case, if you could check, it's usually down at the bottom or it might be on the right-hand side of your screen, and change that to where it says all panelists and attendees. We're going to have a little bit of audience participation, and just a quick poll here. How many of you were at last week's email efficiency for Outlook? So yes or no in the chat box. If you were here last week, say yes. If you were not here last week, say no. This will be a good practice for the chat box. Okay, so I'm seeing about half and half is what it looks like. Half yes, half no. So for those of you who said yes, some of this will be a little bit repetitive, but don't log off. There will be enough new information, and it will be customized to Gmail so that you will still get a lot of that new information. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to show you my top #1 most excited Gmail tip, could possibly even change your life type of tip. Maybe that's an overstatement, but maybe it's not. It's my absolute favorite tip in Gmail that does not work on other platforms. So stick around for that one. Some of you may already know this trick, but if you don't, make sure you're sticking around to the end. So just a quick heads up, if you haven't seen the last webinar, check with Becca. I think it's going to be available to Tipping Connect members and or maybe to the public as well. And that one is focused more on Outlook. This one is going to be focused more on Gmail, but some of the principles are going to be the same. This is me, information about me, and this is my website, emailcoach.net. And if you want to check it out, it's kind of in its infancy, but I do have email. You can sign up for my email list and get my email mini course, which basically you're receiving now, as well as my email masterclass, and then some testimonials that I have. So this is just kind of a landing page. Really, if you want to contact me, then just email me, and that information is going to be at the end of the presentation here. So let's get some practice again using that chat box. And just for my own information, how do you use Gmail? Do you use it for business? Do you use it for your personal account? Maybe both. So in the chat box, tell me, do you use it for business? Do you use it for your personal account, or do you use it for both? Both, personal. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of both and a few personals, both, but I highly prefer Outlook. Yes, clubs and boards. Okay, I prefer Outlook too, but there are some things that Gmail can do that Outlook can't, and vice versa. And so one of those things is, I'm getting a little bit into the weeds here, but the categories feature in Gmail, unless you set it up with your host, like I use Bluehost to host my website, and unless I set it up with my host, you can't use Outlook, some Outlook features, even though you're importing your Gmail inbox into Outlook. I don't want to get too much into the weeds in that. So sometimes it's better just to use the internal client, the native client rather, other than using Outlook, but I'm the same way. So good, and it looks like we've got good audience participation here. So thanks for using the chat box there. I want to talk to you about email habits initially. This is the habit loop, and it's from Atomic Habits by James Clear. And the habit loop talks about cue, craving, response, and reward, and that's how habits are formed. And the example that I like to give is the Girl Scout cookies, right? So the cue for me is I walk by the pantry, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, there might be some delicious snacks in that pantry. And then the craving is, one of those delicious snacks is the leftover Girl Scout cookies, and I want some. And then the response is I open the pantry, and then the reward is that I get to eat that delicious Thin Mint, right? That works all fine and well when we're talking about, say, food cravings, which, you know, in this coronavirus epidemic, I tend to have a lot more of than when I'm at the office, right? But it also works with email. Maybe that cue is that pop-up notification on your phone, or maybe it's the sound that you hear when that email comes in. And then the craving is to check that email, or to delete it, or to take care of it. And how you respond and how the reward that you get from that is a little bit different. But when it comes to maintaining your inbox, the importance here, particularly for business, but also if you really want to stay on top of your personal email, is healthy inbox habits and not letting email overwhelm you, because it's a good possibility that email can overwhelm you. Here's some email facts. One of them that I really like to highlight here is that the University of California, Irvine did a study, and it found that a high amount of email is associated with a high level of stress. And they even hooked up heart rate monitors and all sorts of crazy stuff. And so a lot of us are getting so many emails. Whoops, went ahead too early. A lot of us are getting so many emails on a daily basis. The average office worker, this isn't even including personal email accounts, the average office worker is getting 5.4 emails, 120 emails a day and 5.4 hours worth of work in their inbox each weekday. That's a lot for the average office worker, but that doesn't even count the personal emails that we're getting, right? So that's a lot more, especially if you're signing up for like coupons and this and that. So you're going to have a lot of email in your inbox, and I don't see that going away anytime soon. 55% of individuals check their email before they go to work. And then 33% of millennials check their emails before they even roll out of bed in the morning. 39% of people reported using a smart device in the bathroom to check email or social media. And for the 18 to 29-year-old crowd, that number was over 80%. So there's some email facts for you. But what I'd like to know is, in the chat box, share with me, what are some of your frustrations when it comes to email? What frustrates you about your inbox? And let me know if you're talking your personal inbox or your work inbox, so we can differentiate the two. So go ahead and add that in the chat box. What are some of your frustrations when it comes to email? One example that I get is, when it comes to work, I can't leave the office for a vacation because when I come back, I feel like I have too many emails in my inbox. Or I don't know when I'm receiving, in my personal inbox, I've heard, I don't know when I'm receiving an email from a family member because I get so many coupons and so many emails from businesses that I don't know. I haven't filtered those out yet. So it's hard to find the right ones. The responses I'm getting here, the mix between junk and then trying to sift through what's real email and what's not. On Gmail, it feels like it's not easy to delete messages without opening them. When I swipe it, it just archives, and I want to be able to delete Gmail emails faster. Okay, so you're talking about on your mobile device. Great. Going through and having to unsubscribe to so many, yes. Remind me at the end in the Q&A. Oh, and one other thing, I didn't mention this earlier, but down below in the chat box, next to that is like a Q&A button. And if you have an actual question that you want answered during the Q&A section, don't type it in the chat box, type it in the Q&A box. So if I could have you remind me by typing this into the Q&A box, Lacey, remind me to talk about a service called Unroll Me and the pros and cons of that service. So type that into the question and answer chat box, and I'll talk about the unsubscribing. Okay, so yeah, that's a lot of the frustrations that I hear quite frequently. And just a fun survey here. How many emails are in your inbox right now? Work versus personal. I know that we have one listener or one participant of this webinar who has over 60,000 in their inbox right now. Sorry, 76,000. Work, 327, 4. Good job, Lydia. 0 unread. Good. Excellent. So this 662 in your personal inbox. I probably have in my what I call my junk email, I probably have like 20,000 emails in my junk Gmail that I don't give out to anyone except businesses. Personal, about 800. 12 unread. Okay, so I'm seeing a good mix here, from anywhere from 0 unread all the way up to 76,000. So this is the hard part about our email, is we want access to the information that we want, and we want it when we want it. So we've got to learn the tools to use to make sure that we're categorizing those emails correctly, or that they are categorizing themselves correctly, which is a lot easier in Gmail because it's got some smarter filtering than, say, Outlook does. So I've been asked to go over my email system to start with, and you'll see this when we get into my inbox. It'll be on the left-hand side. But in the inbox, we have emails that have come in that need to be filtered or sorted, put into what we call labels in Gmail, folders in Outlook. And the system that I use is soon, later, follow up. If there's any upcoming meetings, I put it into those. Then I archive and delete so much. That is the biggest tool for me, is just archive and delete. as many emails as you can. And then in Outlook, I use quick steps. And in Gmail, I just make sure that those emails are being filtered appropriately. So I try and get everything categorized into something that I need to do soon, something that I need to do later, something that I've followed up on or delegated. If there's an upcoming meeting, I drag it to that folder so that I have that agenda item or maybe that video conference link. So I just go to that folder and I don't have to dig for it or sift for it. And then everything else I'm archiving and deleting. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm using the search feature to find what I need. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that later as well. If you've got a lot of email, whether it's your work or your personal email, and you're finding yourself overwhelmed by it, my first recommendation is to declare email bankruptcy. I call it email bankruptcy. You can also call it an email triage, right? But the idea is if you can just delete a bunch of old emails, get them out of your inbox, archive them, put them someplace else, put them in a folder called the old inbox folder, or in Gmail, it would be a label, right? And then get them out of your inbox so it's decluttering your physical space. For me, it's harder to work if my desk has a bunch of junk on it. And the same thing if like I'm cooking in the kitchen and there's a bunch of dishes in the sink, right? It's harder for me to focus and concentrate when there's clutter around. And so the same is with the inbox. I want my inbox to be less cluttered. And so establishing a system and moving on with that system is important. That's that habit loop we were talking about. Are you reacting to your email as they come in one by one? I mean, that's kind of the nature of email, right? You're reacting to what's coming in, but how are you reacting to it? Are you doing it in a systematic way, or are you reacting to it just whimsically one by one without a system in place? So as much as you can, declare email bankruptcy, move those emails out, get them out of your space. You can still keep them, put them in another folder, label them differently, and get them out of your inbox so that you can move on. There's a lot of Gmail settings, particularly on your non-mobile client. If you're logging in with your desktop or with your laptop, there's a lot of settings in Gmail that you can use to help you. Those settings will still be active if you're using your smartphone or your tablet, but the settings on your tablet or on your smartphone are going to be slightly different than the settings in your inbox. So it's just going to depend on the view settings that you've set up. But there's a lot of Gmail settings. We're going to cover a lot of them today. Just recognize that we're not going to cover all of them, but I'm going to cover as many as we can because there's so many useful tools. Back in the day, some of these settings were things called labs. So it was basically like this, that Google was pretending like this was this laboratory, and you could enable Google Labs to see how these features would work. And if they were popular features or if they continue to work well, then they would implement them as a regular feature. And that's the way it is with their icons that I'm going to show you. Is that used to be a Google Lab feature, and now they've implemented it to where it's a standard feature in Gmail. So there's a lot that they're continuing to do. Just recently, they had a system called Inbox by Google, and it was trying to compete with Outlook to where you could pull multiple inboxes together into one. And what they did was they scrapped that and they said, we're just going to implement a lot of these things into our Gmail app. That seems to be what people are using anyway. So we're going to just implement a lot of these features straight into Gmail. So there's a lot you can do within Gmail. We're going to navigate Gmail a little bit live so that you can see each of these and kind of get a visual representation of some of them. But just a quick note, I might say Gmail folders. It's technically labels. They don't have folders in Gmail because you can label something with 2 or 3 or 4 different labels. Whereas if you put it in a folder in Outlook, the only way to do that is to copy that email and then drag a copy of the email into a folder. So it's like Evernote. If you've used Evernote or anything with tags or labels, it's that tagging feature. So it doesn't technically have folders. It just has labels that you can apply. All right, so let's jump straight into the inbox here. And I want to show you a lot of those settings and how you can implement them in your own inbox. The first thing is you'll notice these tabs up at the top: primary, social, promotions, and updates. These are not on by default. These you have to turn on in the settings. And I have them turned on already because I wanted to have some of these pre-selected for you so you could see what it would look like. But if it's not already enabled in your Gmail inbox, you'll have to go enable them. The good news is, though, if you do enable those those different categories. They call these categories. If you do enable these categories, you can see which emails are coming to which category on your mobile device as well in the Gmail app. So if the first thing I want to show you is the display density, and I've got it set to default. I like the default view because you'll notice in the default view, it has things like this Google Sheets or Microsoft Word icon, or this presentation or PowerPoint icon, or that there's an image attached to this email. And so it gives me that visual cue, and I really like that visual cue. If you want the comfortable inbox, it's going to still be nice and spaced out, but on the right-hand side here, I can't hover my mouse over it, but right above my mouse here, you'll see that it's got that paperclip icon, and that paperclip icon tells you that there's an attachment as opposed to the larger visual cue. And then if you've got a bunch of emails in your inbox and you want to just squish them all together, this is the compact view. So it eliminates a lot of that extra space. I personally like to use the default view, but to each their own. Now, if you click on this cogwheel and go to settings, that's where we're going to spend a lot of the next few minutes, is in the settings section. And you'll notice that across the settings area, there's a bunch of different tabs that we're going to be navigating between. We're going to spend some time in each of these just to show you a little bit, in most of these, not all of these, to show you a little bit about what they do and how they can benefit your inbox. Most of your higher quality settings are going to be under general. Inbox, filters and blocked addresses, forwarding. There's different features that you can use depending on how you want to set up your system for your inbox. But a lot of them that I like to use and like to show people are specifically in the general tab. The first one here, the first one that I want to cover is the maximum page size. And that's how many conversations, they call them conversations. How many conversations do you want to appear on your page? The default is 50. I leave it at the default. But if you want each page to show fewer, you can say only 10 conversations per page. If you wanted to expand that out to 100, you could expand it to 100, but it won't go over 100. Also, there's this really neat feature called undo send. So in Outlook, you can recall a message if you sent it, but it doesn't always work. It's like, so-and-so is trying to recall this message, but you've already read it. And then they're probably at their desk just doing this number like, I didn't mean to send that, or, oh, I forgot the attachment. Email has become a lot smarter now, where it's like, hey, it seems like you're trying to attach something. Are you sure you want to send this? But sometimes that doesn't catch that, right? So this undo send feature will kind of pause that email for 5 to 30 seconds. The default is 5 seconds. I have mine set to 10, to where if you're like, I wanted to add one more thing, or I forgot to attach that. There's when you go to send that email, and I'll just show you here, it's going to show up in the bottom right left-hand corner for me. And then I'll just click send. And then down here, it says message sent, and I can undo that or I can view it. And oh no, I wanted to undo that. So it undid that message, and then it brought me back to my composition here. So it did not actually send that email. So going back to the settings here. So that's the undo send feature. And then this is how long that pop-up will show up in the lower left-hand corner. The default reply behavior, this is when you're in an inbox, in a conversation in your inbox, and that little arrow will be a default to reply or reply all. My recommendation is just default it to reply. If you are intentionally trying to reply all, then just select that icon and reply all directly. But so many times, I'm sure this has happened to you, it's happened to me probably hundreds of times, where people will reply all when they shouldn't, or when they accidentally did it. One that is a nice courtesy, somebody's being polite, but it's also just cluttering inboxes, is when somebody sends an email out about an announcement and then somebody replies all and says, thanks. That's it. Thanking the whole listserv for one person sending an email. That to me is an instance when you could just reply rather than reply all, right? So the default reply behavior, you can set one by selecting which one you would like to show up. The send and archive is an option when you are replying to something, where you can click send, and then automatically archive that, and it gets it out of your inbox. It doesn't delete it. It's just going to put it in your archive folder so that you don't have to manually archive that later. You can show or hide that button. It doesn't mean that you have to use that every single time you send it, but it does make it available in your email composition. You can also set your default text style. I really like this font, Trebuchet. There's kind of an ongoing joke on the internet: never use Comic Sans unless you're a teenager. But Comic Sans is available there. I personally really like the look of Comic Sans, but a lot of graphics design artists are saying don't ever use Comic Sans. So Tahoma, Trebuchet, Veranda, those are nice fonts. And of course, you can always go with sans serif. But you can customize what your email will look like, and it shows you a visual. So if you were saying, well, what's large text look like? Or what's really small what's really small text look like? It's going to show you that visual here. Dynamic email. Images is pretty standard. Always display external images versus asking for displaying external images. In Gmail, as a client, it's a little bit safer to display external images than it is in Outlook because it doesn't actually have to download that image. It still stays native in your client, but some people like to disable that and ask first. But it will also disable the dynamic email feature, which we're talking about next. And dynamic email is, with some organizations, dynamic email will allow you to interact with that email without leaving your inbox. So, for example, in the chat box, tell me how many of you have used a Doodle poll. And Doodle is this not a subscription, but this feature, this website that allows you to schedule times. So when should we meet for our next meeting? And then everyone puts in what their Doodle is. Yeah. Looks like everyone so far has said yes to Doodle. So if you get an email with Doodle, this dynamic email here will allow you to respond to the Doodle poll from within the email. You don't have to exit and go to the Doodle link. You can actually do it from within your email in Gmail. For those of you who have not used Doodle, it's actually a pretty cool feature. A website that you go to, you just send the link out to everyone and you create this poll that says, hey, when can you meet? You select some dates and then everybody says yes or no. And then there's also a third feature called if need be. And it's kind of like, I can technically meet at that time, but I really don't want to. So Doodle's a really cool and free feature, but that's a common one that folks are using for email scheduling, or for meeting scheduling rather, and they're sending it out via email. So this dynamic email feature will allow you to respond to Doodle and others, depending on what the developers have enabled, allow you to respond to some of those from within your email, so you don't have to actually leave your inbox. Smart Compose, autocorrect is pretty self-explanatory, but Smart Compose is predictive suggestions when you're writing an email. And I'm going to show you that right now. And I've got a sample here. So if I met somebody at a conference and I wanted to say, hey, nice seeing you at the conference. So I'm going to email myself. Actually, okay. And then I'm going to say, hi, Sean. Thank you for your email. It's not smart composing, but it normally does. It was nice seeing you at the conference. All right. For some reason, it's not working, even though it was 10 minutes ago when I tested this. So basically what will happen is at the end of this, it will show you the rest of the word. And if you just click tab, it will automatically complete that word for you. So it doesn't save a ton of time. It saves a little bit of time, the Smart Compose. And it will also work on your phone if you're smart composing. I think instead of hitting tab, I think you just swipe. But on the Smart Compose, it will help you finish your word or your sentence. I'm going to see if I can do thank you for your time. No, it's not smart composing right now for some reason. Typically you say thank you for your time or something like that. Thank you for your email. You just hit tab and it will automatically finish composing that email, or that part of that line for you. So it won't save you a ton of time, but it will save you a few seconds, and it's a nice feature to have. If you're a fast enough typer, then you really don't have to worry about it because you can probably type faster than you can press tab. But it's a cool little feature, and that's what this one does. Okay. Experimental access, that's just allowing you to see some of the features that Gmail are implementing or Google is implementing possibly in the future. And then the conversation view, this is when you're responding to an email or clicking on an email, instead of seeing just that one email and that one email reply, conversations will allow you to see the whole chain of emails, including replies. So an example of this, just going to go back to my inbox here. I sent myself a couple of emails. All right, so this is 2 or 3 emails that are together in the same conversation. So if I wanted to delete just one of these emails in the conversation, I can. But this conversation view, when we go back to your inbox, is going to be all of those emails that you have replied to and they've replied back to you and so on in one conversation. So that's what they mean by a conversation. It's basically just an email chain, right? You can turn that off if you don't like it. If you only want to see every single email separately, you can turn that off through conversation view. Nudges are fun. Nudges are, hey, did you want to also include this person on the email? We're going to talk a little bit later about how Gmail is using your data. But for me personally, I like that Gmail is using my data to help me, to help customize my experience for me. And nudges are one of those ways, because if I'm constantly sending an email to, let's say, my brother and my dad and I are typically emailing a lot. So if I email my dad, sometimes it'll nudge me and say, did you want to include your brother? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But it's just saying, hey, by the way, you could also include this person just in case you forgot. So that's what these are, is the nudges. And you can always click learn more. And Gmail does a really good job of kind of laying out how to turn those on, how to turn them off, and what they look like both on a computer, on an Android, and on an iPad or iPhone. Okay, desktop notifications. This is if you wanted Gmail to act like Outlook does, and it brings that notification up in the bottom corner, and it says, hey, you've got a new email, and here's a preview of that email. So you can turn desktop notifications on for all new mail. You can turn it on for what Google designates as important mail. And the importance of that is indicated by an icon in your inbox that I'll show you in a moment. Or you could just leave notifications off. I like to leave those notifications off because I want to check my email and I want to bulk process my email on my terms. I don't want to check them in one by one as they're coming in. There is, let's see here, you can add your picture to your email as well, particularly for Google services. So if your email is emailing somebody else who is using a Google service, not necessarily an @gmail.com, but any Google service, you can include your picture as well. And then contacts for autocomplete, let's see here. Signature. You can customize your signature just as you can in Outlook, and this is dynamic, so you can add images, you can change the color, whether that's the background color. This would be obnoxious, but I could do this. Don't ever do this, I'm just warning you, because it would not look good. So you could change the background color, maybe unless you're a Steelers fan, maybe then that would be okay. But I'm gonna leave the background color clear, and I'm gonna just leave it plain black. And this is going to be your email signature. Personal level indicators. These are the little arrows that appear next to your email in the inbox. And I'm going to show you these when we go back to the inbox, but that's how you can designate your email as important, which when we go back up to this one here where it says these smart notifications, or these desktop notifications, important mail is often indicated through these personal level indicators, and Google is learning what you're designating as important versus what you're not. So there's a lot of machine learning that's going on here that does not go on in other email clients. So you can show those indicators or you can choose not to. Snippets are if you've got a web search and you wanted to type that, or you are giving a recommendation for a restaurant and you type that recommendation or that business's address, these snippets can show you these snippets of that message or of maybe that restaurant or of that review within your email. in your inbox, or you can just show the subject only and not show those little previews in your inbox. Auto reply for vacation, that's a pretty standard feature. This one I wanted to show you as well. This used to be the labs feature that I was telling you about, and that's your stars in your email. They're like categories, they're like flags in Outlook, but they're different because you can customize them and you can choose the order in which they will toggle through. And I'll show you that here in a moment as well. I like to use the purple star, the yellow exclamation point, the green check mark, the blue info sign, and then the red exclamation point. And my system is, if it's a purple star, I've responded to that message or I've delegated that message. And I use the same color in Outlook. So that's why I'm choosing to use the purple star and not this orange one, just for consistency's sake. So I set up whatever kind of system that you're using, but I like to have my system consistent both in Outlook and in Gmail so that I don't have to think as hard about what each thing means. So this yellow star is something that I need to do at some point. Green check mark is something that's been completed. The blue eyes is like, hey, this is just an FYI. And then the red exclamation point is more for a sense of urgency. So before we get into some of these other settings, I'm going to go back into my inbox and show you some of these features. I'm going to cancel because I have all of my settings already created. So this green check mark, I'll show you, if you press it one time, it's going to toggle whatever that icon is. But if I press it once and I keep pressing it, it's going to switch through those until I get to the one that I want. Now, those others that I said are not being used are not going to toggle through. So you would have to go back into your settings and say, well, which ones do I actually want to use? And then it's as easy as clicking them with your mouse and dragging them up or dragging them into the do not use section. Okay. So when I go back to my inbox, if I wanted to say, oh, I completed this, the cautionary tale that I'll give you for this is, if I put a green check mark and then somebody replies with a follow-up, oh, I forgot to mention, can you also add 10 other things to that order? It's still going to show up with that green check mark. So be careful, because that green check mark will still be there. You'll need to toggle it back to, oh, I need to do something with this email, because it's in a conversation view and it's going to apply that icon to the whole conversation. If you've turned conversation view off, then it's not going to be as much of an issue. Okay. So that's just something to be aware of. And I'll leave it there. Okay. These are those personal level indicators that I was talking about earlier. Google Magic, as they call it, is it will tell you whether it's marked it as important or not. And if we go back in, there's you'll notice, if you look at this icon, there's 2 lines, but sometimes there will be a 1 line versus a 2 line. And that's where you can configure it down here with these personal level indicators. If you display 1 arrow, then it's something that is sent to your address, but not by a mailing list. And a double arrow is a message that's sent only to you. So let's say somebody sent an email to 4 or 5 people, but it was not a mailing list. That would be 1 arrow. If it was sent just to you as a recipient, then it's going to have 2 arrows. And then it will also dictate whether or not something is an important email or not. Okay. So that's those personal level indicators. These up here are categories, and the categories is also turned on in your settings. And that one is it under, did I skip it? I thought it was in this section here. Oh, it's under inbox. That's what it is. It's under inbox, and we're going to go there next. Actually, we'll go there now. So these categories, I'm good for time. These categories here, you can just choose which categories you want to display. Updates, promotions, social, forums, primary is the default. And then you can have this box checked where anytime you star a message, it puts it back into your primary inbox so that you see it initially as opposed to having to go to one of those tabs. The downside is I haven't found a way to customize what these categories say. So far, they are only able to say social, promotions, updates, and forums. I have not yet found a way to customize these. But what I will do is I'll customize them in my mind. I know that kind of sounds funny, but for these updates, I'm going to put certain email subscriptions or updates or things like that. I'm going to drag those to those folder and train Google using what they call their Google magic, right? Their machine learning. I'm going to drag emails to that folder, and I'm going to tell them, here's what I want to go in this folder, and here's what I don't want to go in this folder. So I'm kind of training Google which emails should or should not show up in those folders. And that will happen with time. So these are things that you can turn on, and it will start categorizing those emails as they come into your inbox. So if we go back to the inbox here, you'll notice that YouTube and Instagram are all going to go to the social tab. Or if these are what are called promotions, which some of these are not promotions, so I'll show you how to use some of that Google magic later. And then updates, I'm going to show you a feature within updates as well in just a few moments. But going back to this, going back to the settings here, that's that tab inbox. That's how you get those to show up at the top, these categories to show up at the top. Okay. If you like having the reading pane on in your inbox, that's the message preview. I'll just enable it, save the changes, and show you what that looks like. I don't like it in my Gmail inbox. Maybe I didn't give it enough time to refresh. I did click save, right? Well, I'm not sure why it's not doing it, but it should show you a reading pane on the right-hand side here. Maybe this is it. Okay, there we go. It enables that button over here, and I missed that. So if you wanted to have the reading pane up, just kind of like Outlook, where you can read through these emails one by one and have the preview over here, you can do that. And then if you want to toggle that off, you can. I don't even use it, so I'm going to just leave it completely disabled under my inbox settings. And I'm going to leave that deselected. Okay, and then filtered email, you can override filters for some emails, and I choose not to override those filters. I just leave those off. Speaking of filters, this is something that is very handy. I talked about this in the last webinar as well. This is something that's extremely handy to do, but you want to be careful when you do it because you can miss emails this way. So if I said, I'm emailing myself something, I want it to skip the inbox, I want it to star it, and then I want it to apply it to the label of to do soon. This is a sample filter that I've created. You can edit filters and have it, excuse me, have them do one thing or have them do multiple things. But if you do ever have it skip the inbox, that's where you have to be careful, because then you might miss the email. It's not even going to go into one of those other sections unless you apply it to a certain label. So when you're filtering, just be careful with filtering. I'm going to show you my super secret Gmail hack later that I definitely recommend you use a filter for, and it's quite life-altering. And then, of course, you can set up email forwarding, and that's what I have done from my Sean@Gmail coach email. I've set up email forwarding from there to forward into this inbox. So any email that I receive at my emailcoach.net email is going to come into my Gmail email. And you'll notice here that this is bestemailcoach@gmail.com. I'm not being arrogant. It's just that emailcoach@gmail.com was taken. So I wanted to have a separate inbox for everything to be forwarded into so that I could navigate it and use it through Gmail as opposed to the digital client that they were using. And then we can talk a little bit about advanced, and in the interest of time, I don't want to talk too much about this, but one that I do want to show you is this templates. It used to be called canned responses, and in Outlook, it's the same as a quick part. But in essence, if you're typing the same email response over and over, hypothetically, let's say your business gets an email inquiry, I'm interested in learning more about your venue because maybe you're like hosting weddings or ceremonies. I'm interested in learning more about your venue and your prices. Please let me know. So maybe you've already created that template that says, here's what the venue is, here's the prices, and then you only wanted to add some additional information at the end, like here's the dates that are available in April, like you've been requesting. So you can enable templates and automatically send a response with that template that you can still modify, but it's going to pre-populate that email composition with that template. And then you don't have to manually type that in over and over and over again. Or I've seen some people keep a Word document and then they copy and paste it. This is just allowing you to do it natively within the Gmail client. You can also create custom keyboard shortcuts. I don't use a lot of keyboard shortcuts in Gmail, but if you are someone who likes to use those those keyboard shortcuts, you can customize certain shortcuts in Gmail. And then this one here, I like this one. This is the unread message icon. And if you look at the top of Chrome, right up here, you can see the number 1 there. That's what this unread message icon is referring to. How many emails are in my inbox? I've got 1 here, and it shows me that I've got 1 over here. Okay. And then the last thing is themes. You can set a theme. This is a picture that I took when I went to New Zealand. And you can actually set a theme. There's some pre-set themes that are in here. You can get themes from Gmail, or you can add some of your own photos, and that's what I've done. I've just added that theme here, and if I'm in my email, that's this, according to UC Irvine, this potentially stressful place, right? Maybe I want to see a nice reminder of a vacation that I took. So you can change the background to look a little bit nicer or more serene or even calming, whatever it is that you want. So that's that. And then I want to leave some time for Q&A. Yeah, I'm going to discard these changes. I want to leave some time for Q&A, but I wanted to show you some of these composition tools and snoozing emails, okay? So when it comes to composing emails, I'm going to go to compose. You can have it composed down here in the right-hand corner, or you can expand it. I like to expand it. You can minimize it back again if you want. I like to expand it because I want to focus on the email that I'm writing, and I don't want to be distracted by other emails that may or may not be coming in. But down here, there's a feature here that's send later, or a scheduled send time. This is super handy if you don't want to send the email right away. Maybe it's 10 o'clock at night, but you want your customer to see that email the next day when they get into their inbox. So maybe you want to schedule it to send at 7 a.m. the next morning, so that it doesn't get lost in yesterday's emails. You can schedule that send. This is a separate add-on called Boomerang. Boomerang would do a scheduled send before they implement it default into Gmail. So this is an add-on that I've actually installed. You probably don't have the send later button in yours unless you've installed Boomerang. And then Boomerang also will use artificial intelligence to help you write better emails. In other words, what's the readability? How likely are people to respond? And Boomerang is a paid, they have a free version or a paid service. I really liked it for the scheduled send feature, but then Gmail just implemented that and said, well, we're just going to give it to you. You don't have to pay a third-party service to do this. Another thing that I like is if you're organizing and saving your files using Google Drive, you can insert to your email using Google Drive, or your standard, I'm going to attach files from my computer. So you can do either here. And since Google Drive and Gmail work hand in hand as both being a Gmail tool, they've got that implemented. Another one is confidential mode. So confidential mode will allow the email to expire. And it basically auto deletes permanently forever off of their server. There are some caveats to that. So click learn more to kind of learn about that. But you can also have an SMS passcode. So maybe you're sending sensitive information with possibly a social security number, and you want that to be a confidential email as opposed to just a standard email that you're sending. That's when you can use confidential mode. Again, click learn more if you want to learn about the details about this. Just know that there's a feature there that you can use for that. You can send money using Gmail. The other thing is these 3 dots in the bottom right-hand corner. If you wanted to apply a label to the email that you're sending, you wanted to pre-apply that label, you can do that here while you're sending it. So if I wanted to say, well, I want to follow up with this, before I even send it, I can apply that label. So there's other options here down in the bottom corner with the 3 dots. So that's some of the composition things. The other thing I wanted to show you is snoozing an email. This one right here, security advice from Google. Let us help you. Google can use this email address to make sure that it's really you if you get locked out. Oh, that sounds important. I should probably do that. But I'm working on other things right now. Or, oh, I want to have this coupon for later, but I'm not going shopping today. I'm going shopping tomorrow. If you click in this icon right here, you can snooze the email, and this also works in the Gmail native app. You can snooze the email. It's going to disappear from your inbox, and you can choose when to receive it again. You can pick a date and time. Maybe there's an upcoming meeting and you wanted to send a reminder. So you snooze that email to 3 days before the meeting. It pops back into your inbox and you're like, oh yeah, I need to send that reminder. That's why I snoozed this email. And you can choose a date and time in which you put that back in your inbox. So if I wanted to snooze this email until later today at 6 p.m., I just click that. It's no longer in my inbox, and it'll come back to my inbox as a snoozed message, and it'll come to the top. So you can use the snooze feature to kind of temporarily bring emails back into view. That's the snooze feature. The other one is, and I want to get to Q&A, so I'll show you this and then I will probably have to cut it short from here. The other one is multiple inboxes. This one's getting a little bit in the weeds, and it can be kind of ugly and kind of crazy, but I'm going to show you it anyway, just to show you the level of complexity that you can use in Gmail. Inbox type, you can change what you show first. So if you only want to see your important messages first, it's going to show up at the top. Maybe you only want to see your unread messages first or your starred messages first. So I'm going to just show you important messages first and save my changes to show you the differences here. And now any email that was marked as important is showing up in this important tab. And then here's everything else. You'll notice that it removed the categories at the top. So this is combining all of your emails into one inbox and then putting them into these like separate inbox tabs. And multiple inboxes is very similar to this. Whoops, wrong one. Not configure inbox settings. Multiple inboxes is very similar to this. If you use multiple inboxes, you can choose what you want your inboxes to do. So in this case, I want to say if my email is starred or if my email is drafts, then I want those to be separate inboxes. So I'm going to save that and just show you. It's very similar to what you saw earlier. So these are all of my starred emails. These are all of my email drafts. And then everything else in my inbox is showing up without categories at the top. It's just showing up as one kind of separate section. So you can have some of these custom sections appear at the top if you choose for them to. So that's what multiple inboxes is. That's really getting, I did it again. That's really getting more into the weeds, but that's how you can customize how your inbox, take 3, thank you. That's how you can customize your inbox to show it the way you want to show it. I'm going to leave it on default. And the reason I like default is because I love these categories. So the last 2 things I'm going to show you before my 1 minute till Q&A. If you do have any Q&A, by the way, put them in the Q&A section. I only have 1 here currently. So ask your questions in the Q&A so I have a list of 2 or 3 when I get to that section. But I really like these categories up at the top, and I'm going to show you a couple of things using them. You heard earlier, you can't change what these say, but you can change how you are customizing them using what they call the Gmail magic or the Google magic, right? So for me, this right here is it's under social. That's where I left it. No, maybe I put it under promotions. Okay, so this right here is Pat Flynn. I follow Pat Flynn. He's a website called smartpassiveincome.com. He's one of the bloggers and podcasters I've been following for a very long time. So I left this email in here. It's technically from 2019, but I don't want it to show up in my promotions tab. I want those to all go into updates. So now at the bottom here, conversation moved to updates. Do this for future messages from newsletter at Smart Passive Income? Yes. So now from here forward, all of the emails that come in from newsletter at smartpassiveincome.com are going to go to that updates category. Something else is, this is another one that I follow, Flipped Lifestyle, but they use different email addresses. So like Shane and Jocelyn are the 2 people that are in charge of this. but they also have maybe like info at Flipped Lifestyle. So the challenge here is if it's designating it as a promotion, you may have to do this multiple times. So each of those emails automatically get put into that inbox, but you can do that multiple times so that it starts to automatically categorize those. And then the last thing under search is for my promotions here, no, updates. If I left all these updates in here on purpose because I have more than 50. And you'll notice that 50 was the limit that we set in our settings. So if I wanted to check this box, it's only going to check 50 conversations. Make sure if you want to do something to all of those conversations altogether, click this little link here, select all 485 conversations. I'm going to archive, I can mark them as red too, but I'm going to archive all 485 of those, or I can delete them. So I'm going to archive them. Yes, it's going to affect all 485. It's going to work for a second. They disappeared, then they came back, and then they disappeared. Okay. All right. So there they are, other than the ones that I have applied a special label to. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is that you can do the same thing for delete. These are just notifications from Instagram and YouTube. And then I can say, okay, delete those. These advertisements up here at the top, that's how Google makes their money, part of the way that they make their money. So you can delete those, but they're going to show up again in like 20 minutes anyway. So that's kind of for naught unless you're just working in that inbox at that very moment. Last thing, and then I'll get to the Q&A, I promise. When you're talking about Gmail searching, Gmail has power searching, and I'm just going to do a quick search here just to show you. These are through the support page. These are all the different operators that you can use in Gmail. So if you wanted to just search for an email, maybe it was an email from your mom that had a picture, and it was a picture of them on vacation, and you wanted to find that email, but oh my goodness, it's somewhere in your inbox. I don't remember where it's at. You can say from that person and that it has an attachment. So just go to Google and type in Gmail power search or Gmail search operators, and that'll show you that list that you can use up here to individually search for those messages. Okay, I want to get to the Q&A at this point, and we've only got about 7 or 8 minutes left, maybe go over 2 or 3 minutes if Becca lets me. But let's get to the questions. Okay, so unsubscribing. I did say I wanted to come back to this earlier. And unsubscribing using Unroll Me. So there are some features to unsubscribe in Gmail. So if you click on an email, there's a little button here that says unsubscribe, and then Gmail works their magic to unsubscribe from that on the back end. But there's a feature called Unroll Me, unroll.me, I think. And what this will do is it will help you unsubscribe from a lot of emails, and then it will combine emails into one one Unroll Me digest. It's completely free, but you'll notice here up in the top corner, it says how we use data. You're giving them access to your data, to the emails that you're receiving in your inbox, and they can sell that to other advertisers, to other folks. So it is a free service, and it helps you kind of declutter your inbox in Gmail, but just recognize that if you're unsubscribing using a third-party feature like Unroll Me, that they get your data and they can use it. And the Unroll Me has had questions enough about, well, how do we use your data, that they've added this to their website, but they do get your data. So just be mindful when you're using the unsubscribe feature that's external to Gmail. If you want to unsubscribe, you can click unsubscribe. Okay. Let's say you declare email bankruptcy. How do you mass delete emails in Gmail? Yes. So if you click on this checkbox here that says select, and then if you want to check it again, or actually mine will not allow me to because I only have 12 emails here. But if you have a bunch of those emails, say 60,000, just select it and then make sure you click on that that says, do you want to select all the rest of them? You say yes, and then you can archive them. At that point, then you just do a power search and say, oh yeah, that email was from so-and-so, and then you can just search for it, which goes to, Okay, I don't know how to cancel that. All right, which goes to this next question, which is where do archived emails go and what does the archive look like? So if you scroll down, there is actually the rest of your emails are and should be in an archived folder. So under your labels, where did the archived go? It should be over here. Okay, you can, I'm not seeing it here, and this might be a setting that I've customized myself. You can go over here. You can see your scheduled emails. You can see all of your emails. You can see your spam and your trash, but you can also search in archive using those power search. So I think is archived. It might be go back and look at the power search operators, but you can search by default. If you're searching in your mail, you're going to be searching everywhere, not just in your inbox. Okay. So if you wanted to find that, you can, I promise. I promise you can find it. For whatever reason, it's not showing up on the left-hand side for me, but that is, it is still stored and contained in your Gmail, but not in your inbox that you're visually seeing here. If you're worried about that and you don't want to have to do an archive and you wanted to just declare email bankruptcy and go to an old folder, you could just select all of these emails and then apply them with a label of creating a new label, and I'll say old inbox. And you can nest that label under something else similar to a folder. So I'm going to archive all of these into, or not archive, I'm going to change the label of all of these into old inbox. And then if I archive them, it gets them out of my inbox view, but I can go to that old inbox label and it's still here. It just no longer shows up in my inbox because it's not in my inbox anymore. It's in my other label called old inbox. If you wanted it to go back into your inbox, you can move this email back into your inbox. It's up here, sorry. You can move it back into your inbox and you can say, mark it as unread, or I want to move it back to my inbox, or I want to mark it as spam, whichever. So if I move this specific email back to my inbox, it's going to show back up here. But you'll also notice that it still retains this old inbox label. So that's what I was saying. You can have multiple labels for the same email. So if I go back to my labels and I want to say, this is in my old inbox, but it's also something where I want to follow up on it, and I can apply it. There it is in my inbox. It's going to have all of those categories. So if I did a search, or if I go down to these categories here and I say, well, this was old inbox, but it's also follow-up. So I can go to my follow-up label, and then here's my follow-up label. So that's how you can use the labels feature. It's similar to folders, but it allows for a lot easier email searching. Okay, I know I've covered a lot. And like I said earlier, Gmail is really dense in a good way. There's a lot that you can do with it. I didn't even get to all the features. But one thing that I did want to talk to you about is my super secret Gmail tip. That's the best Gmail tip ever, as I say. And that is, in Gmail only, the period doesn't matter. So if I typed best.email.coach@gmail.com versus bestemailcoach@gmail.com, or bestemailcoach, but with just the C.H@gmail.com, all of those are still going to come to my email because Gmail ignores periods. So if you tried to go and sign up for any of these three emails, Gmail's not going to let you. So, oh, okay, there's a poll. That's nice. What's really cool about that, though, is let's say you're trying to figure out, like, oh, I'm getting so many coupons and I can't differentiate them. The first thing is, if you've already done that, just create a new email, share it with your family only, and don't sign up to coupons with that email. I have 2 separate email accounts, one for personal, 3 technically, one for personal, one for email coach. And then the other one is the email that I just give to, I don't know, Meijer or Starbucks, and then they get my email inbox. So all the coupons go there, and then I just go, okay, well, I'm going to log into my other coupons only email if I'm looking for those web coupons. But let's say you've got it all in one inbox. You don't want to differentiate the two. You've already started receiving those. You could do something like this: best email coach, but with a period before the H, and then automatically skip the inbox with those using the filter feature. so that any email that's sent to that email address, even though they're all still coming to you, any email that's sent to just that email address is automatically going to skip your inbox and then going to be applied to the promotions label. And then when you are at Starbucks and you're like, oh yeah, I've got a coupon or I've got a 10% off or whatever, you can just go straight into your email on your phone, go to that specific label. Within that label, search for Starbucks, and it's not going to clutter up your inbox. So you can use this any number of ways. You can put the period in different locations and then have different filters depending on who you're giving those out to. But that is it only works in Gmail. It doesn't work in Yahoo. I don't think it works in, what's another one of the free clients that people use? Hotmail. I'm not sure if it works in Hotmail, but it works in Gmail and it is wonderful. So if you don't want to give up your email because all your family members have it or whatever, from here forward, when you start subscribing to coupons or stores or websites, start using a different period in different locations so that those will filter, and then set up those filters and then you can filter those out. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate everything that you taught all of us. I know the one thing that I love the most is the ability to change my background. So I'm going to take a picture of the beautiful day outside and put on my background since we're not allowed outside. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Just a couple housekeeping items there. I just sent a message out to you guys saying some items. The first item that I really want to talk about is Sean has graciously offered 5 one-on-one coaching sessions for Gmail with Email Coach. So if you want to take advantage of those, go ahead and message Sean at emailcoach.net. Or you can message us on Facebook in the Tippy Connect group. The caveat to that is that you do have to be a Tippy Connect member for 2020. If you're not currently, go ahead and join. The link is in that message that I just sent. And then I think that might be it. Oh, next week we have giving and receiving feedback with Crystal Corey. So make sure that you guys sign up for that. The link is in that Zoom chat right there. It will also come to you in a follow-up email. So if you guys have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining us. This recording will be on tobeconnect.com. Along with our other one, we did have a little bit of technical difficulty. We apologize about that. It'll be up by tomorrow afternoon. Thanks so much. Enjoy the sunshine and have a great day.
Bye, everyone.